Rich man mocks black waitress by forcing her to play piano, but her talent leaves him speechless. She dinner rush always began the same way. Tiana Brooks tied on her black apron, fixed the tiny treble clef pin near her collar, and took one deep breath beside the swinging kitchen door. The hotel restaurant glowed with warm light, and the air smelled like baked bread, butter, and coffee. A small piano stood near the bar, quiet and clean, its lid reflecting the soft lamps above it. Tiana moved table to table with steady steps, writing orders in neat lines, checking water glasses, and offering a kind word when someone looked tired. She liked order. She liked rhythm. Even as a waitress, she followed a quiet beat inside her head. She had learned to do this job well. She smiled without forcing it. She listened to guests who wanted to talk and gave space to those who did not. She kept plates level, saucers dry, and coffee hot. She remembered who wanted extra lemon, who loved the house soup, and who needed the gluten-free bread. She treated the room like a song. There was timing, volume, and a gentle rise and fall. Only a few people knew that she had once spent hours each day at a piano. She had won a small scholarship, studied scales until her wrists ached, and learned to move her fingers like water. Life had changed. Bills arrived. Family needed help. The scholarship ended. The music never left her, but she hid it under long shifts and careful work. The staff was like a second family. Jimmy, the bartender, worked with quick hands and a kind voice. He could pour, joke, and calm a tense table with just one remark. Luis, the busier, had a quiet smile and carried heavy trays as if they were light. Rosa, the manager, cared about details and about people. She watched the floor with sharp eyes, but she also brought extra soup to the kitchen line when they worked late. They knew Tiana was steady. When a child cried, she knelt and spoke softly. When a guest complained, she kept her voice smooth and found a solution. When a tense group arrived, she stayed calm and moved the room along. It was a Friday night, and the hotel hummed. A corporate party filled the ballroom, so the restaurant had extra tables turned, extra noise, and extra nerves. Rosa met the team before the doors opened. "We keep it smooth," she said, tapping her pen. "If anyone gives you trouble, call me. You do not have to carry nonsense alone." Tiana nodded and tucked her pen behind her ear. She liked that Rosa said it every time. It reminded everyone that they had backing, that they were not on an island. Early guests came and went with easy smiles. A couple split a steak and held hands across the table. A traveler ate fast and returned to a laptop. In the corner, a small family took a quiet table. The mother stared at the piano the way people look at a long-lost friend, and the father told a story that made the girl giggle into her napkin. Tiana brought them tea, and the mother watched Tiana's treble clef pin and said, "That's pretty." Tiana thanked her and moved on, not explaining more. Her past felt like a private room inside a house she still owned but did not visit often. Near 8 o'clock, 3 people entered with the air of a cold wind. The host greeted them, and they walked in before he could finish speaking. The man in front had silver hair that looked shaped by design, a jacket with a silk pocket square, and a watch that caught the light like a small star. He spoke loudly about a deal, numbers, and how most people did not understand the weight of decisions. His name, the host whispered later, was Graham Whitaker. People said he made money by betting on bright ideas. Tonight, he seemed to enjoy the sound of his own voice most of all. Tiana got their table. She said hello with steady calm and set down menus. Graham did not look at her at first. He waved at the wine list as if shooing a fly. "Bring your best red," he said. "Not what you push on tourists. Real red." Tiana asked if he preferred a bold or a light body. "Bold. Obviously," he said, finally looking up, eyes sliding over her like he was checking a price tag. Tiana wrote a note, thanked him, and moved to Jimmy at the bar. "Cabernet," The good one, she said softly. Jimmy nodded and lifted a bottle with a quiet shrug that said, I'm with you. When she returned, Graham was telling a story about a meeting. He mimicked a person's voice and made his guests laugh. The laugh was light and a little sharp. He said, you have to test people. Push, and you find what they're made of. He tasted the wine and nodded at last, like someone granting approval. Better, he said. The two guests asked questions about shares and exits. Tiana took their food order and kept the service crisp. She checked the other tables, where things stayed warm and easy, but she could feel a new tension at her station, like a string pulled a little too tight. On his second glass of wine, Graham noticed the piano. He lifted his chin and smirked. Does anyone ever play that thing, he asked, or is it just decoration? Tiana said it was mostly for special events. He grinned as if he had found a toy. Anyone could play, he said, tapping his glass. It's not hard. His guests smiled and kept their eyes low. Tiana felt a small heat rise in her chest, but she answered in a calm voice. Some people practice many years, she said. They make it look easy because of the practice. Graham waved a hand. Sure, sure. Talent is funny. People either have it or they don't. Rosa passed behind Tiana, reading the air. She gave a small nod that meant, I'm here. Tiana squared plates and moved like the room's pulse. She brought bread, checked sauces, and kept her shoulders from tensing. The family in the corner ate slowly and watched the piano too, as if waiting to see what would happen next. The mother glanced at Tiana again and then back at the piano. It was a small thing, but Tiana felt seen. That feeling helped. The meals arrived. Graham talked louder. He told a new story about a gala and a famous person who had tried to play a song and failed. He laughed at the memory. He said, embarrassing, really. If you're going to sit on a bench, at least make a sound worth hearing. His eyes flicked again to the piano and then to Tiana, as if he were putting pieces together in his head. The room did not go quiet, but it bent around his voice. Tiana kept her answers short and respectful. She did not feed the moment. She also did not run from it. She did her job. By 9, the dining room thinned. The business party next door grew louder, bursts of applause rolled through the wall and then faded again. Graham leaned back in his chair, studied the piano, and then studied Tiana as she refilled his water. You, he said, pointing with his chin, do you know anything about music? His tone was playful in a way that did not feel kind. Tiana held his gaze for 1 second and said, a bit. He smiled like a cat. Prove it. The two guests watched their plates. One of them coughed into a napkin. Jimmy's eyes met Tiana's from the bar. He shook his head just once, small and steady. Rosa shifted her path to bring herself closer to the table. Tiana did not answer right away. She folded her cloth slowly, letting the silence belong to her. I'm here to serve your meal, she said. If you need anything from the kitchen, please tell me, and I'll bring it. Graham laughed. Come on. 1 minute. Play something real. Entertain us. He tapped his glass again. The sound cut through the room like a little bell. The family in the corner stilled. The mother set her cup down very carefully. The father looked at their daughter and then at the manager, as if wondering whether to speak. A couple by the window pulled out a phone. Tiana felt that old inner room open, the one with a piano and a window that let in morning light. She felt her grandmother's hand on her shoulder and heard a voice say, take your time. But this was not a stage. This was her workplace. And this man's tone was not an invitation, it was a push. Rosa stepped in smoothly. Sir, she said, pleasant and firm, our staff are not performers. If you would like music, we can see what the lounge has tonight. Graham did not look at her. I'm not asking for a concert, he said. Just a little proof. A little fun. Everyone here would enjoy it. He gestured at the room as if he owned it. Tiana stood straight, neither angry nor small. She had learned that being still could be its own kind of strength. She also knew that saying no could sometimes bring a scene that spilled over and hurt others on the shift. "Are you sure you want me to play?" she asked, her voice even. It was an honest question, though she knew he would hear it as a challenge. Graham smiled wider. "Absolutely. Show us what you've got." He slid a heavy bill under his water glass and pressed the glass down. "And there's a tip for the effort." The offer did not feel like kindness. It felt like a test. Tiana looked at the bill and then at the piano. She did not touch either one. Jimmy dried a glass with slow, careful circles, watching the table. Luis paused with a tray of plates near the kitchen door, waiting for a sign. The room's sound softened, like the moment before rain. Tiana could feel many eyes, but she also felt her own steady breath. She thought of her mother resting at home and of her sister studying late, of rent due on the first and of the tiny jar where she put extra coins. She also thought of how music had once given her a name she liked to say to herself, pianist, not just worker, not just helper pianist. Rosa did not push her. That mattered. The choice, for the moment, lay with Tiana. She wiped her hands on her apron, not because they were wet but because it gave them something to do. She looked at Graham and said, "If I play, it will be one piece. I will choose it. Then I will go back to my work. Do you understand?" Graham made a small show of rolling his wrist, as if granting permission. "Fine," he said. "One piece." The two guests looked up, surprised, then down again, as if they were not sure which way to face. Tiana walked toward the piano with quiet steps. She moved past the tables she had served all night. People sat back, unsure whether to clap or to hold still. The small family in the corner leaned forward, hope rising on their faces like light. Jimmy set the glass down and folded his arms, not in judgment but in support. Rosa took a small step to the side, where she could see the whole room and make a choice if she had to. Tiana reached the bench and rested her fingertips on the cool edge. For a breath, she did not sit. She looked at the black and white keys and saw not just wood and felt but years. Lessons in a church basement. A teacher who corrected her wrist with a tap of a pencil. A grandmother who hummed a simple tune while stirring a pot of soup. She sat at last and placed her hands on her knees. The bench felt familiar, like a seat she had owned but loaned to someone else. She lifted her hands and let them hover above the keys, just for a second, as the room's noise narrowed to a thin line. Behind her, Graham leaned back, ready to be amused. He took a slow sip of wine, as if he were about to judge a trick. Tiana did not look at him. She did not look at anyone. She watched the keys and her breath and the space between them. She could stop. She could stand and walk away. She could play. She chose. She lowered her fingers to the piano, the smallest touch at first, like placing a hand on a door before opening it. The room did not know yet what sound would come, but it leaned toward her, waiting. And in that tilt of silence, the night changed. Tiana's fingers met the keys like they were greeting an old friend. The surface was cool and smooth, faintly polished from other hands over other nights. She did not press yet. She let the feel of the bench settle under her. She let her shoulders drop by a small degree, the way her first teacher had taught her long ago. Lower the weight, breathe, listen to the room before you make a sound in it. Behind her, glassware clicked softly as Jimmy set a row of clean stems upside down. Rosa stood at a diagonal, where she could see both the piano and Graham's table without blocking anyone's view. Luis hovered by the kitchen door with a tray he refused to set down, as if putting it on a stand would break the attention he was lending like a gift. The family in the corner sat forward as one. The little girl's chin rested on her folded hands. Graham tapped his finger on the table, just once, as if he were the metronome now. His guests looked anywhere but at him. One studied the grain in the tabletop, the other smoothed a napkin that did not need smoothing. The bill under the water glass glowed faintly, trapped like a small fish under clear ice. Tiana kept her gaze on the keys and felt the weight of that trapped bill and what it represented, a dare dressed up as generosity. She spoke without turning. "Rosa," she said, her voice level, "I'm playing one piece. After that I return to my work." It was not a question. It was a boundary. Rosa answered in the same calm tone. "Understood. You owe no one more than that. If you need me to stop this, lift your right hand, and I'll step in." That hand signal was a thing they used for many situations. It meant, "I need help." It also meant, "I am not alone." The phones came out, a few of them, faces shining above small rectangles. Tiana felt a quick sting at the sight. She did not want to become a video for someone else's page. She could not control that now. She could only control her hands, her breath, and the music she chose to make. She placed her left foot on the soft pedal, pressed it gently, then released. The felt dampers were responsive. The instrument had been tuned recently, she could hear clean harmonics in the air when the room hushed this much. She thought of starting with the bravest piece she knew, a prelude that asked for wide leaps and quick wrists. She let that idea pass. Tonight was not about display. It was about telling the truth with notes. She thought of her grandmother's kitchen, of a simple hymn that had held fragile days together. The melody was plain, the kind anyone could hum. But the space around it could be big. In that space, she could place patience, respect, and a kind of steady love. She lowered her hands like a gate opening and laid the first chord down very softly, a cushion of sound. It was not yet the melody, only the ground on which the melody would stand. Then she let her right hand rise and speak a single line, slow and even, each note shaped as if it were a word that needed to be understood clear the first time. The piano's tone was warm, not bright, matching the lamps and the wood. At the first few notes, conversation thinned but did not stop. A fork chinked, a chair leg adjusted. Graham breathed out through his nose, a small sound that might have been amusement. Tiana did not push against that. She stayed with the line, circling it once, then adding a quiet harmony underneath, the way two people sit together on a porch and talk about one memory from two angles. She kept the tempo unhurried, like a person walking with someone who is tired. She remembered the pencil tap on her wrist from Mr. Ellis years ago, not heavy. Never heavy. Lean in, don't press down. She shaped the phrase with that in mind, lifting before each note landed so the sound connected like speech instead of thuds. By the second pass through the melody, the room began to lean with her. The couple by the window lowered their phone, not to stop recording but because they forgot it was in their hand. The bartender's steady movements slowed without his noticing, his eyes on her left hand's graceful reach. Graham's smirk loosened into something unreadable. He looked at his glass, then at Tiana's back, then at his guests, as if measuring what impression he was supposed to project. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it, because the sentence he had pulled up in his mind did not fit inside this sound. He sat back instead and crossed his arms, a posture that said, "I will be the judge of this." But the air around him had changed, his arms looked more like a shield than a throne. Tiana gave the hymn one clean ending cadence and let it rest. She did not lift her hands yet. Silence is a kind of note, too. She held that silence like a bowl, then filled it with a new set of chords, darker and thicker, letting the left hand step downstairs while the right hand drew a new line above. She was not changing the song yet, she was showing that the same melody could wear another coat and still be itself. Rosa glanced at the room and saw shoulders lowering, jaws unclenching, a man at a two-top who had been grumpy about a late appetizer now breathing like he had time again. She also saw the phones. She made a quiet choice and drifted to two nearby tables and, with a warm whisper, asked guests to keep their filming low and not block anyone's view. Her tone was not scolding. It was respectful. People listened to her because she treated them like adults. Tiana felt old practice wake in her arms, not in a flashy way but in the way a long-known path through a park rises under your feet even when you have not walked it for years. She introduced a simple counter melody in thirds, then tucked it behind the main line like a voice humming along from the kitchen while the singer in the front room took the lead. Her left foot brushed the soft pedal, shaping the edges, keeping the sound from becoming sharp. She could feel without turning Graham's attention trying to decide between control and surrender. She granted him neither. She did not perform for him, she did not defy him. She played for the room and for herself, for her grandmother, for the quiet in her own chest. And because she had chosen this, because she had set the terms, the choice felt like standing, not bowing. A server from the lounge peeked in, drawn by the unusual quiet. The kitchen window opened, and a cook with a flour-dusted cap leaned out, elbows on the sill. The door to the ballroom cracked open on a burst of applause and then closed again, as if the other party existed in a different weather system. Here, the atmosphere was the soft steady rain of notes, washing things down to their shapes. Graham lifted the water glass with the bill under it, almost without thinking, then set it back when he realized what his hand had done. The gesture gave away more than words. He was wondering if the money still meant what he had thought. He was wondering who had control over meaning now. His guests noticed, exchanged a quick glance of their own, and made the smallest of nods, the kind people make when something is shifting and they know not to comment on it yet. Tiana moved the melody from the middle register higher, letting it bloom like a lantern rising. She did not make it big. She made it clear. Clarity is a kind of power that does not need to shout. The girl in the corner opened her mouth a little, the way children do when the thing they are seeing lines up with a picture they did not know they were carrying inside. The mother's eyes shone, the father's hand found hers under the table. Jimmy stopped wiping glasses. He placed the towel down and leaned, forearms on the bar, chin between his hands, as open as the child. He had seen good and bad in this room, pressure, kindness, mistakes, growth. He knew the exact weight of a night when one person's dignity was tested in public. He also knew what it looked like when someone turned a test into a statement without raising their voice. He counted this as one of those nights. Tiana finished the second pass and let both hands rest on the keys without sound for a heartbeat. She could end here, and it would be enough. She could also step a little further and show one more face of the same tune, not to impress but to complete the thought. She chose to step. She shifted the harmony under the melody, borrowing a color from jazz, a gentle slide, a blue note tucked like a sigh. The piano accepted it and gave back warmth. Graham uncrossed his arms. He did not clap between phrases, he was not that out of place. But his face had lost its secure expression. He looked more like a man looking at a photograph he had not seen in years and recognizing something he did not expect to miss. His guests, freed by his silence, relaxed their shoulders. One of them let out a small breath he had been holding and smiled at no one in particular, as if conceding that he, too, might not have known what he did not know. Rose's eyes flicked to Tiana's right hand, ready to step in if that hand rose in the agreed signal. It did not. Instead, Tiana carried the last curve of the melody down to a quiet resting place, like setting a sleeping child into a bed and smoothing the sheet. She let the chord ring. The instrument's body hummed back to her palms and through the bench into her spine. Then she did something small that only players and close watchers might notice. She took her hands off the keys a breath early and allowed the instrument to finish the sentence alone. That small trust leaving a sound to fade without gripping it told the room that she was not afraid of quiet. It told the room that silence could be safe in her care. The hotel seemed to hold still around that hush. A tray did not rattle. A straw did not squeak up the last inch of soda. Even Graham did not move his chair. It was as if the entire space had arrived at the same stop sign and agreed to look both ways before going on. Phones hovered, recording not much: a still frame, a face of a woman sitting with her hands in her lap, the low shine of a piano's lid, the reflection of a lamp, but recording, too, what stillness looks like when it belongs to someone who has earned it. Tiana could have turned then, accepted the first claps as they began, and walked back to her station with a nod. She did not. Not yet. She reached up and placed her hands back on the keys for one last, short gesture, not a flourish, not a big finish, just a gentle echo of the first line, like saying good night after the story is already complete. 2 measures. A small cadence. The kind of ending that leaves a door open for tomorrow. Only then did she lift her hands fully and stand. She did not bow, she was not on a stage that asked for bows. She turned, smoothed her apron with both hands, and met the room with a level gaze. The first claps arrived, cautious, as if people were unsure whether applause belonged in a restaurant not meant for concerts. The caution lasted a second and broke into something honest. It was not thunder. It was steady rain. People clapped because the room asked it of them, because their own chests needed a way to say yes to what had happened. Graham brought his hands together late. The sound of his applause was a little out of time, a fraction behind the rest, as if he were following a song he did not know well yet. He did not speak. He watched Tiana walk past his table without looking down at the bill trapped under the glass. She gave a small nod that included everyone and no one. She returned to the place where she had been all night, between the kitchen door and the bar, in the narrow lane where service lives, and she picked up the tray Louise had been guarding. In the corner, the mother whispered to her daughter. The girl nodded and folded her hands again, a new kind of neatness. Jimmy picked up the towel as if he had put it down only to listen better, and began to dry another glass with a rhythm that matched, faintly, the hymn. Rosa met Tiana for one brief second as their paths crossed. Neither said "Are you okay?" or "That was beautiful," though both sentences sat ready. They traded a shorter, truer language, the same small smile, the same tiny breath out, and moved on. The night had not ended. Orders still went out. Coffee still needed refills. Checks were ready at 3 tables and not yet asked for at 2 more. The rhythm of the room restarted, but it was a different tempo now, a notch slower, a shade kinder. Tiana rode that pulse as easily as she had before, but something inside her had shifted into alignment, like the weight of a picture straightening on its nail. Graham sat very still. The story he had planned to tell later, about making a waitress prove herself for sport, had already fallen apart, and he knew it. He touched the water glass, slid the bill out, added 3 more, then placed the stack under the edge of the bread plate instead, as if hiding it from the shape of his earlier show. He glanced toward Tiana, not to summon her but to measure the space between them that his earlier tone had stretched too far. Tiana did not look his way. She did not avoid him, either. She took care of the tables that needed her, wiped the ring where a glass had sweated onto wood, and replaced a flickering teal light. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was easy. When she finally approached Graham's table to ask if he needed anything else, her voice was as it had been at the start of the night, calm, professional, clear. "Can I bring you dessert menus?" she asked, "or coffee?" Graham's reply took a moment to find. "Coffee," he said at last. "Please." The word landed like a new chord in a song that had changed keys while he wasn't listening. Tiana nodded and turned toward the bar. Jimmy had already set a cup and saucer out, a small act of teamwork that felt like applause carried into action. Tiana lifted the pot, poured, and the coffee's dark surface steadied without a ripple. She set it down with her usual care, then stepped back into the lane where the next need waited. The room exhaled. The phones went away. The little girl in the corner drew a staff with 5 lines on her paper placemat and colored small circles on it, guessing at notes. The hotel returned to being a restaurant. But the space around the piano kept a quiet glow, the kind that remains after a candle has been blown out and your eyes still see its shape. And somewhere, under the apron and the careful steps, the word Tiana had not said aloud yet pressed warm against her ribs again. Pianist. Thought for 46 seconds. Tiana moved through the lane between the bar and the kitchen with the same steady pace she always used, but the air touched her skin differently now. It felt cooler, cleaner, as if the room had opened a window. She placed the coffee at Graham's table with quiet care and asked other guests if they needed anything else. She folded a napkin, straightened a knife, and guided a stroller wheel around a chair leg so the family by the door could pass without trouble. Her body did the work. Her mind held the last note of the hymn like a small light cupped in both hands. The restaurant's noise returned in soft pieces. People spoke again, but their voices were lower. Laughter came back, but it was round and warm instead of sharp. When someone set down a fork too fast and it tapped the plate, they looked around and smiled, a little shy. The small family in the corner finished their tea and did not rush to leave. The girl drew small ovals on a paper placemat, like tiny notes. She would hold the paper carefully when they walked out later, as if it could fly away. Jimmy caught Tiana's eye and lifted his chin in a proud, simple way. He did not say wow or you were amazing. He poured water and wiped the bar, but the look said what words would have overloaded. Rosa gave Tiana a brief nod when they passed in the middle of the floor. It was the kind of nod that means, I saw. I'm with you. Keep going. At Graham's table, the three adults sat with their cups and did not speak for a minute. Graham looked at his hands, then at the piano, then at the plate where he had slid new bills under the edge. He reached for his cufflink and turned it once. The cufflink was silver with a tiny engraving on it that most people would miss, a small curved line and two dots, like a smiling face but not quite. It was actually a little symbol from a sheet of music. He had worn it for years without thinking about what it meant. Tonight the mark felt like a door that had been closed and was now open a crack. One of his guests cleared his throat gently. That was, very good, he said, as if the room required soft words. The other guest nodded and looked down into his coffee as if it might reflect a different person back to him. Graham picked up his cup and put it down without drinking. The habit of filling a silence with a story got ready to stand in his mouth, then sat back down again when the first sentence would not line up. Tiana kept working. A couple at the window asked for a dessert menu, and she brought it with a kind smile. She explained the lemon tart in 2 lines and did not oversell it. She refilled waters for the two top who had been impatient earlier, and the man who had raised his voice before now said thank you like a person learning a new word that felt good to pronounce. She placed a fresh teal light on a table where the candle had gone out, and the woman there whispered, "You play beautifully," without trying to start a long talk. Tiana replied, "Thank you," in the same small key. The hotel's lounge server peeked in again and, after a moment of watching, slipped out to tell the pianist in the other room there was a hired musician there on Fridays that the dining room had just heard something special. The hired player smiled to himself and played a quieter piece than he had planned, like a person taking off a hat when they walk into a place of worship. The kitchen sent out late-night soups for the staff, a habit Rosa kept on busy nights so people would not go home hungry. Tiana carried 2 bowls to the side station and left them covered for later. She washed her hands, dried them, and returned to the floor just as the small family in the corner rose to go. The mother stepped over gently. "Excuse me," she said, with the mix of warmth and respect people use when they don't want to take up too much of your time. "We heard you at a church hall a long time ago. You played Claire de Lune and a hymn after. Our daughter has asked for a piano since then." She smiled at the girl, whose eyes were wide but calm. "Thank you for reminding her that music can live anywhere." Tiana felt a soft tug in her chest where the old title pianist Saturday. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "I'm happy you were here tonight." She looked at the girl. "If you ever start lessons, remember that slow playing is not failure. It's thinking. It makes the fast parts honest when they come later. The girl nodded with grave seriousness, as children do when they decide to remember something forever. They left. The door closed with a quiet click. For a few minutes, nothing big happened. That was the turning. The night moved forward, but every part had shifted half a step toward better. At Graham's table, movement came back. He finally tasted the coffee. It was strong and hot, and it gave him something to do with his hands. He looked at Tiana as she crossed the room to the bar and then back at the piano. He half raised his hand to call her and then stopped, because the call felt wrong now. When she did come by to check on the table, the first thing he said surprised even him. "You played with control," he said, quietly. "And with space." He searched for words he had not used in years. "You left room for the notes to mean what they mean." It was not an apology. Not yet. It was an admission that the situation had changed. "Thank you," Tiana said. Her tone was still professional but warmer, the way a morning gets lighter by one shade at a time. "Do you need anything else?" "Not right now," he said. He looked down again, then up. "Did you learn in school?" "A little," she said. "Mostly at church. And with a teacher who gave me a lot for a little." "That shows," he said, then added nothing more, because he did not know how to explain why it mattered. She gave a small nod and moved on. Jimmy, who had listened to 1,000 half-conversations across that bar, watched Graham's face and saw the work happening behind it. He did not enjoy Graham's discomfort. He did not wish him pain. He did find it right, in the plain sense of the word, that a person who had used noise should now meet quiet and learn how to sit inside it. In the kitchen, the line began to slow as orders thinned. A cook whistled a few bars that sounded like Tiana's melody, then caught himself and smiled. Even the dish pit, which usually kept its own hard rhythm of clatter and steam, felt less like a storm and more like rain tapping a roof. A table of tourists near the entrance asked Tiana if they could take a picture of the piano. "Not with her, just the piano, because our friend back home collects photos of instruments in hotels." Tiana smiled and said, "Of course," and stood to the side so she would not be in the frame. When they had their photo, the older woman in the group turned and said, "We will tell our friend that a real artist used this one tonight." Again, the praise was simple. People were choosing plain words. Plain words held better. Rosa took a slow walk around the room. She checked the thermostat, the back door latch, the stack of high chairs, all the small things managers carry in their heads. She stopped by the piano and, with a napkin, touched a spot of fingerprint off the lid so the wood kept its soft shine. It was not a big act, just a small respect. She would talk to hotel leadership in the morning about making a clear policy for nights like this. Staff should never feel pushed into showing a talent to please a guest. That would be written down. It would be talked about in pre-shift. It would be real. As the hour grew later, the hired pianist from the lounge came in on his break and stood near the bar. He nodded to Tiana. "I'm Ben," he said softly. "That was lovely. Your voicing was tender." He paused. "You didn't need big volume." "That's rare." Tiana thanked him. She asked about the piano's condition, and they traded 2 sentences like technicians comparing notes. Action a bit stiff in the middle range, pedals clean, tuning solid last week. It sounded like shop talk, and it was, but beneath it was respect between people who know the same craft from different doors. Graham's table asked for the check. Tiana brought it. She did not watch them count bills. She did not adjust her pace to see whether the money under the bread plate stayed or went. Whatever it was, it would not change what had already happened. Graham signed slowly, then rested the pen on the folder. He did not hand it over with a flourish. He waited until Tiana returned, then held it out with both hands. "Thank you for your service tonight," he said. He meant the food and the coffee and also something else. And, for the music. The last words were careful. He was not used to careful words. They felt honest in his mouth. "You're welcome," Tiana said. She did not make him feel better. She did not make him feel worse. She gave him the dignity of being a person who could decide what to do next with what he had seen and heard. He nodded and stood. The two guests rose with him. They left without the loud talk that had announced their arrival. The door closed, and the room stayed the same size, but it held more light. When Tiana finally took her staff soup to the side station and sat for the first time in hours, she did not gulp it down. She took slow spoonfuls. The broth was simple and hot. She tasted thyme, a little garlic, and the salt that makes you remember water. Jimmy leaned on the other side of the small counter. "You okay?" he asked in his gentle way. "I'm okay," she said. It went the way it needed to. She set the spoon down. "Thank you for being still when I needed stillness." "Always," he said. "You made the room breathe. Not many can do that." She smiled and looked at her hands. The faint lines on her fingers from old practice felt like a map someone had redrawn in ink so it would not fade again. She flexed her wrists, turning them palm up and then down, as if checking a tool before putting it away. Luis came by with a plate of cut mango and set it down next to her soup. "Sugar," he said in one word, and moved on. She laughed softly and ate a slice. It tasted like sunlight. On her next loop of the floor, the girls' placemat drawing lay forgotten on the corner station. The family had left it behind. Tiana picked it up. 5 staff lines. A few round notes. A little heart in the corner. She could picture the girl sleeping now, hand curled near her cheek, music in her head. Tiana slid the paper under the shelf so it would not get wet and decided she would keep it by her locker for a while. Not forever, but for long enough. The last tables paid and left. Chairs turned over on the closed sections. The busing bin stopped rattling. Rosa gathered the team for a quick closing huddle. She kept it short. "Thank you," she said. "For pace, for teamwork, for kindness. Tonight had a moment. We handled it together." She looked at Tiana and then at the rest, not highlighting anyone too much. "I'll send a note in the morning about guest requests for personal performances. For now, go home safe. Hydrate. Stretch your backs. Sleep." They laughed a little at the stretch your backs line. It was her thing. They liked it. People fetched their bags. The dish pit shut off its loud final rinse, and the room heard itself again. Tiana wiped the last table, set the last chair, and checked the piano once more. She did not play. She placed her palm on the wood for half a second, a meeting between warm skin and cool Polish, and that was enough. In the quiet, Graham's empty table stood like any other table, the space he had filled now just chairs and wood and a small circle of light on a white cloth. The power he had tried to throw around earlier had no shape left in the room. The only thing that had stayed was the sound Tiana had made and the way it had changed people's faces. Outside, the night was soft. The city lights looked less like noise and more like a pattern. Tiana walked to the bus stop with her cardigan over her shoulders and her treble clef pin catching a street lamp as she passed under it. She did not replay each bar in her head. She did not judge herself. She carried the simple truth of what she had done, she chose her own terms. She played one piece. She gave it space. The room listened. Somewhere, words were starting to move on phones. A clip would soon pass from one friend to another, then to a stranger, then to a crowd. But that was later. For now, the turning had already happened in the place that mattered most, inside the people who had been there, and inside Tiana herself. The night had changed key, and it fit. Morning came with soft light and the smell of tea in Tiana's small kitchen. She sat at the table in her quiet apartment, a notebook open beside her cup. Her hands felt calm, not shaky the way they sometimes did after a hard night. She wrote a few lines about the shift, like she always did after long days. She noted small things that worked well, like how the team stayed in rhythm and how Rosa's calm voice made people listen. She also wrote one sentence she had not written in a long time, played one piece. Set my own terms. Her phone buzzed again and again on the table. At first she ignored it. She did not want to live inside a screen. But the buzzing did not stop. She finally picked it up and saw message after message. Friends from church had texted links. A co-worker sent a short note with a heart, saw you. Proud. A cousin sent a clip with shaky sound and a caption, is this you? Tiana tapped one link. The video opened to the side of her back at the piano and the soft sound of the hymn. The room in the video held very still. It felt strange to watch herself from the outside, like looking at a reflection in a window and also seeing the street behind it. She did not read the comments. She knew there would be kind ones and loud ones and some that were not careful with their words. She put the phone down and finished her tea. Then she washed the cup, cleaned the spoon, and set both to dry. Order helped. It gave the day a simple frame. At 9, a new message arrived from Rosa. Check your email when you can, it said. Also I'm proud. Also call me if the noise gets heavy. Tiana smiled at the screen. She opened her email. There were several new notes. One was from the hotel's operations office. It said the leadership team had heard about what happened and wanted to make sure staff never felt pushed to perform personal talents. It promised a meeting that week to set a clear policy. Another email was from the local arts center. The subject line read, Invitation to perform community night. The message was simple and respectful. It said, we would be honored if you would play a short set next month. Paid rehearsal time and performance. Choose your own program. We will support what you need. Tiana read the note twice. She felt a warm weight in her chest, like a full breath she had been holding for years finally moving. She wrote back, thank you for reaching out. I would like to talk more about your offer. I can come by to see the space and meet the team. She kept it short on purpose. Simple words held better. Another email sat below that one. The subject line said, from Mr. Ellis. Her hands paused over the keys. She clicked. The message was only 4 lines. Dear Tiana, I saw a clip, and I recognized your hands before I recognized your face. I always told you this day would come. If you want coaching for any future playing, I am happy to help. No fee. Only honest work and clear goals. Mr. Ellis. Tiana leaned back in the chair and smiled in a way that made her eyes warm. She had learned scales from him in a church basement. He had taught her that the softest note must still have a spine. She typed back, Dear Mr. Ellis, thank you. I would be grateful for your help. I will set up times that work with my shifts and my family duties. I want to build slow and right. Her mother called then. Her voice sounded rested, which made Tiana happy. I heard you on a friend's phone, her mother said, laughing softly. You played like the kitchen when the bread is in the oven and everyone is waiting. It was a mother's picture, not a music word, and it was perfect. They talked about medicine schedules and her sister's class and what to cook that weekend. At the end, her mother said, make space for this, baby. The world is wide, but your time is only yours if you claim it. At noon, Tiana walked to the arts center. The sun was bright on the sidewalk, and the air felt new. The center was a brick building with big windows and a few green plants near the entrance. Inside, a receptionist greeted her by name, then looked surprised that she knew it. We are glad you're here, the receptionist said, and handed her a visitor tag. The director, a kind woman with short hair and an easy laugh, came out to meet her. They walked through wide halls lined with photos of student recitals and community plays. "We don't want a viral stunt," the director said as they entered a small theater with good light and a polished stage. "We want you to have a safe, paid place to make the music you choose. Our community night is for neighbors, families, anyone who loves art without needing tickets that cost too much. It's our favorite thing here." Her tone was calm. It sounded real. Tiana's shoulders loosened. They sat on the edge of the stage. "How long is the set?" Tiana asked. 25 to 30 minutes, the director said. "You can split it into 2 small blocks if you want a pause in the middle. We provide rehearsal hours on the piano we keep covered, and a staff member to help with the room. We pay our artists. It is a modest check, but it is not nothing. May I choose a program that mixes a hymn, a jazz standard, and a prelude?" Tiana asked. "I want to show the path that made me." "I would love that," the director said. "We can print a small program with your notes if you want to tell a little story about each piece." They discussed dates. The next month had an open Friday. Tiana checked her shift calendar on her phone and saw she had that night free. "I will do it," she said. The words felt like stepping onto a small bridge and finding it strong. When she left the arts center, the sun seemed brighter. She texted Mr. Ellis, "I have a date. Can we meet to plan a practice schedule?" He replied at once, "Wednesday at 6 p.m., church basement. Bring a pencil. Wear shoes you can pedal in." She laughed and nodded at the phone, as if he were in front of her. Back at the hotel that afternoon, Rosa held a short meeting with the staff before the dinner shift. "Here's the plan," she said, holding a printed page. "From now on, if a guest requests a personal performance of any kind from a staff member, the answer is, we can connect you to our lounge or to special events. Staff never have to show private skills at a table. If a situation grows tense, the manager steps in. No debate." She looked around the circle. "You are people first. Thank you for the way you all handled last night." Heads nodded. Shoulders eased. It felt like a team building a fence around each other, not a wall to shut the world out, but a simple line that said, "Respect lives here." Graham walked into the restaurant 5 minutes before open. He did not come with guests. He did not speak loudly. He asked the host if he could have a word with the manager when she had a moment. Rosa saw him and kept her steps calm. She did not smile big. She did not frown. She gave him the same steady face she gave to all guests. "How can I help?" she asked. "May I speak to Tiana when she is not busy?" he said. "Only if she wants to." 2 minutes. Public space. No pressure. The script sounded practiced, like he had prepared it. That was not a bad thing. Practice can be respect too. Rosa found Tiana near the side station counting spoons. "He is here," she said in a low voice. "You do not have to talk to him." "It's okay," Tiana said. "We can speak here by the bar." She set down the spoons and walked over. Graham stood with his hands clasped, not the pose of a person who wants to win a scene but of a person who is trying not to take up too much air. He looked older in a softer way, like a mask had been put down. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. "I want to say something, and I will keep it short. Last night, I used my voice in a way that pressed on your dignity. I tried to turn your job into a show for my table. That was wrong. I am sorry." He paused, took a breath, and did not rush the next part. "What you did at the piano brought back a memory I did not expect. My mother played. She stopped when life got heavy. Hearing you made me remember the sound of our house when I was young. I have not thought of it in years. I am grateful. But my gratitude does not erase what I did. I am sorry." He did not offer money then. He did not hold out a check like a bandage. He let the apology stand on its own feet. Tiana listened with stillness. She did not hurry to save him from the feeling of being wrong. When he finished, she said, "I accept your apology." She let the words be as simple as they needed to be. "I am planning a small concert at the Arts Center next month. If you want to support something, you can give to their community music fund. They help students who need instruments and lessons. It will not come to me. It will go to them." Graham nodded quickly, relief and purpose finding a place to go. "Yes," he said. "Please connect me with the director. I will work with them." He hesitated, then added, "If you ever want help with recording or rehearsal space, I could try to open doors. Only if you ask. Only if it serves your choices." "Thank you," Tiana said. "If I need that, I will reach out. For now, I have what I need: time on a good piano, a teacher, and a date." She offered a small, calm smile. He returned a smaller one and stepped back. "I will leave you to your work," he said, and he left. He did not look at the piano. He did not try to turn the moment into a story for later. Some lessons, if they are real, make people quieter in useful ways. The days that followed fell into a new rhythm. Mornings, Tiana worked her shift or helped her mother with errands. Afternoons, she practiced at the Arts Center. The first day in the rehearsal room, she lifted the piano's cover and felt the same rush she had felt as a girl when she opened a book she had saved for. She played scales slowly. She worked on touch and breath. She wrote notes in her notebook on how each section should feel: simple, not weak; warm, like a hand on a shoulder; clear water, not ice. On Wednesday evening, she met Mr. Ellis in the church basement. He wore the same old sweater with the worn elbows. The piano was the same upright with a scuffed leg and a tone that could turn sweet if you treated it kindly. He stood behind her, arms crossed, and listened without a word as she played through her program. When she finished, he nodded once. "You have grown," he said. "Now we polish." They worked for an hour on one page. He stopped her when her left hand got louder than her right. He asked her to breathe between phrases as if she were telling a friend something important and did not want to rush the message. He tapped his pencil against the wood near middle C and said, "Your silence is good. Trust it more." He never raised his voice. He did not need to. Praise came in small pieces. "Yes. Better. There." She left with tired hands and a calm mind. Word about the Arts Center concert spread through the hotel staff but did not become loud. Jimmy asked what he should wear if he wanted to attend. "Whatever you wear to be comfortable and kind," she said, and he laughed. Luis asked if he could save 2 front-row seats for Tiana's mother and sister. "I'll call early for you," he promised, and he did. Rosa printed the new policy and posted it in the staff room, then led a 5-minute talk about it at every shift. People felt safer. You could see it in how they stood. 2 weeks in, the Arts Center director called Tiana to share news. "A donor reached out," she said. "He wants to fund a small scholarship for local workers who want lessons. He asked that we manage it, not you, so there is no weight on your shoulders. He wishes to stay in the background. I think you can guess who it is, but you do not need to do anything about it. I wanted you to know that good ripples are moving." Tiana thanked her. She did not ask for names. She did not need them. She sat on the stage in the empty hall for a minute after the call and looked out at the rows of seats. They were simple chairs connected in arcs. She pictured neighbors sitting there, tired from work, ready to listen. She pictured her mother in the front row with a soft scarf around her shoulders and her sister with a notepad because she liked to write down feelings as if they were facts. The hotel nightlife kept rolling. Some new guests came because they had seen the clip and wanted to sit near the piano. Tiana kept the same rule she had set that first night: if she played at work, it would be by invitation for a planned event, not on demand. Rosa kept that boundary with quiet strength. Most people understood. People who did not understand learned quickly when they met the manager's steady eye. Each day felt full but not wild. Tiana ate well, slept as much as she could, and stretched her hands before and after practice like Mr. Ellis taught her. She bought a small egg timer and used it to mark short breaks so she would not overwork and make her wrists hurt. She kept her treble clef pin polished and wore it for shifts and for practice, not because it was fancy but because it reminded her of a promise, to keep music close, even when life asked for other things. The night before the concert, she set out a simple dress and soft shoes with good solace. She packed her bag with a pencil, a program copy, a bottle of water, and a small pack of tissues in case her mother cried and forgot to bring any. She wrote one more line in her notebook: I will play like a kitchen with bread in the oven. Warm. Patient. Ready. The choice she had made at the piano weeks before, one piece, on her terms, had grown into a larger choice, also on her terms. She would not leave her job. She liked it and the people in it. She would not chase fame. It was loud and hungry. She would make a small, steady stage of her own and invite the world to visit when it wished. She would keep the room she had always carried inside her and keep a light on there, for herself and for anyone who needed a place to breathe. The night of the concert arrived with a clear sky and a soft wind that carried the scent of late blooming flowers down the street. The Arts Center glowed with welcoming light. Families, neighbors, and friends from the hotel staff streamed inside, talking in low, warm tones as if they were entering a place of respect. The hall was not grand, but it was bright and alive. Simple chairs lined the floor in arcs, and on the stage stood a polished grand piano with its lid lifted like a wing. Backstage, Tiana sat with her treble clef pin fastened neatly. She wore the simple dress she had chosen, soft fabric, not too bright, not too plain. Her shoes fit well for pedaling, and she had her small notebook in her bag in case she needed to glance at her notes, though she already knew every line by heart. She breathed slowly, letting her shoulders fall and rise again. Mr. Ellis sat nearby on a folding chair, arms crossed, sweater sleeves pushed up, his pencil tucked behind his ear as if even tonight he might tap it against the wood to make a point. Remember, he said softly, you are not proving. You are sharing. The difference matters. She nodded. His calm steadied her. Rosa entered backstage with Jimmy and Louise. They brought a bouquet of small white flowers tied with ribbon. From all of us, Rosa said. We took turns signing the card. No speeches, you don't need speeches. Just us, standing with you. Jimmy grinned and said, play like you did that night, and the whole city will start breathing slower. Luis just smiled his quiet smile and handed her a wrapped piece of mango candy. For after, he said. Tiana laughed gently and tucked it into her bag. The hall filled. In the front row, her mother sat with a soft scarf over her shoulders, her eyes bright with pride. Her younger sister sat beside her, notepad in hand, ready to write every feeling like it was a fact. Neighbors she had served at the restaurant came too, some carrying little bags of candy, some just carrying their attention. Even the lounge pianist, Ben, was there, leaning forward with an expression of respect. The lights dimmed. The director of the Arts Center stepped to the microphone and spoke a few words about community, music, and the joy of sharing. Then she said, please welcome, with your full hearts, our guest tonight, Miss Tiana Brooks. Applause rose, warm and full, not loud like thunder but steady like rain on a roof. Tiana walked out calmly, her shoes clicking softly on the wood. She nodded once at the audience, then sat at the piano bench. She placed her hands in her lap and waited until the room was still. Her first piece was the hymn, the same one from that night in the restaurant. She played it even slower, letting each note land like a step on a path through a quiet garden. The hall held its breath. The sound spread across the wooden floor, filling every corner. In the second verse, she added gentle harmonies, like voices rising together. The melody climbed and rested, and when she ended the last chord, she lifted her hands early and let silence hold. The audience waited a moment, then clapped, some with tears in their eyes. Her mother pressed a tissue to her cheek. Her second piece was a jazz standard. She smiled at the keys before she began, her body relaxing into a gentle swing. Her right hand danced lightly, her left laid a foundation like steady footsteps. The melody rose playful, with little slides and pauses that made people nod their heads and tap their feet. A child in the back clapped along softly until his parent hushed him, and the room laughed kindly. When she landed the last note with a playful twist, applause rose quick and bright. She bowed her head slightly, the smile on her lips clear to see. The third piece was a prelude, classical and clear. This was the hardest one. Her hands moved with speed and care, crossing, leaping, shaping lines that curled like ribbons in air. She did not play to impress but to show the years of work she had once given, the muscle memory that had slept but not died. Mr. Ellis tapped his foot gently, following her rhythm. Her sister scribbled notes on the pad, eyes wide. When the piece ended in a strong final chord, the hall erupted in claps that rose higher, echoing against the walls. She closed with a simple finale, a return to the hymn, but blended with new chords she had learned from jazz and shaped with the phrasing of classical study. It was her own arrangement, a picture of her path in one piece. The room grew utterly still again. She let the music speak of kitchens with bread in the oven, of tired nights made easier with song, of dignity held firm under pressure. When she played the last soft cadence and let it fade, the silence after felt holy. Then the applause came, rising to a standing ovation. People cheered. Some whistled. Many wiped their eyes. Tiana stood, bowed simply, and smiled. She did not soak in the moment like a stage star. She accepted it like a gift and walked off. Backstage, her mother embraced her first, whispering, "Baby, you carried us all." Her sister showed her the notepad full of scribbles, warm, clear water, safe silence. Mr. Ellis nodded once and said, "Better. Much better. You left space." Rosa placed a hand on her shoulder, Jimmy patted her back, and Luis handed her the mango candy again, unwrapped this time. Later, as the hall emptied, the director pulled her aside. "The audience loved you," she said. "We want you as a regular, teaching on Saturdays, performing once a month. You will have full use of the practice rooms." Tiana's eyes widened, then softened into a smile. "I would like that," she said. "But I will keep my job too." "Both matter." The director nodded. "We will make it work." In the back row of the hall, Graham had sat quietly. He had not drawn attention. He had not spoken. He left before the applause ended, but not before he signed papers with the director. He funded a new community music scholarship in Tiana's name, not for her but for other workers who dreamed of lessons. It was managed fully by the Arts Center. His name did not appear on it. He chose to stay behind the curtain this time. The days that followed carried a new rhythm. On weekdays, Tiana still tied her apron and worked the restaurant floor with steady grace. On Saturdays, she taught children scales and small songs, telling them, "Slow is not wrong. Slow is thinking." Once a month, she played a concert at the Arts Center, her program shifting as she grew. Some nights, the restaurant stayed quiet, but the piano in the corner had a plaque on it now, "Music here is by invitation of the artist." Staff smiled every time they walked by it. It was a line in the sand that protected dignity. The video of that first night in the restaurant kept spreading online. But for Tiana, it was no longer the center. What mattered most were the faces in the small hall, the warmth of her mother's eyes, the stillness in a room when people truly listened. The title she had once hidden, pianist, was now part of her again, not the only part but a true one. She carried trays, counted spoons, played notes, and taught children. None of it was less. All of it together was her life. The lesson of the night stayed clear: power is not in forcing someone to perform. Power is in recognizing the worth of another person and making space for them to share on their terms. Tiana had turned a test into a truth. She had taken a push and shaped it into music. She had chosen her own note, and the world had listened. And now, wherever she went, restaurant floor, rehearsal room, or quiet kitchen at home, the melody of that choice walked with her, steady as her breath, strong as her hand.